According to Richard Koch's book The 80-20 Principle, The Secret of Achieving More with Less, we've compiled 9 tactics that can help you use less while achieving more for information searchers who don't have the time or desire to read. Introduction. Many of us face impossibly large to-do lists every day in today's fast-paced society. We might be resolved to complete the first task on the list when we get to work, only to discover that 2 other tasks have come up in the interim. Similar to this, businesses find themselves overwhelmed by complexity when juggling a vast array of diverse products to serve numerous markets, much like a clown in a circus. Knowing what is genuinely necessary is more critical than ever in this hectic climate. Understanding the seemingly straightforward yet incredibly potent 80-20 rule is essential in this regard. You may make better use of your time at work by understanding this seemingly universal disparity between effort and reward. Additionally, it has been demonstrated that the principle enables businesses to prosper in a paradoxical way, by doing less rather than more. Finally, you can use the principle in your private life to improve your pleasure and contentment in social interactions. All you have to do is develop the proper 80-20 attitude, which is what these summaries will help you do. Key Concept 1. Typically, a tiny portion of the work produces the majority of the outcomes, output, input. Have you ever gone back to a project you worked on and discovered that the majority of your work was completed just before the end date? It's possible that you accomplished more in the few days before you ran out of time than in the entire prior week. In reality, it is possible to find instances of similar effort-reward mismatches in many different contexts. For instance, many companies have discovered that 80% of their earnings come from just 20% of their product line. In a similar vein, 20% of drivers cause 80% of collisions. While the majority of drivers are cautious, a small percentage of reckless drivers are responsible for the bulk of accidents. This phenomenon is most often known as the 80-20 principle. Approximately 80% of work output is produced by 20% of the job effort, or input. Why isn't this ratio closer to balance? Because different causes have different effects on outcomes. Causes can be loosely split into 2 categories: a minority that has a significant impact on outcomes and a majority that has a minimal impact. An 80-20 split develops as a result. The 80-20 rule is a simplification, though, and the actual ratio frequently varies. For instance, it might be 70-30 or 99.90.01 in actuality. The numbers might not always add up to 100, of course. For instance, a 1997 study found that, out of 300 films, only 4, 1.3%, were responsible for 80% of the box office revenue. As you can see, the 80-20 rule can be seen in a variety of contexts, and as you will discover, this is important knowledge. Key point 2. People don't naturally think with the 80-20 rule because we're used to balance and fairness. The tendency is for people to anticipate a balanced world. In reality, however, imbalance rather than balance is the world's inherent state. For instance, take linguistics as an example. Sir Isaac Pitman observed that approximately 700 common words account for 2/3 of regular communication. Less than 1% of the words in the English language make up more than 80% of what we say when we consider their derivatives, bringing the total to 80%. Where do these imbalances originate, though? Resulting from feedback loops that amplify and reinforce even modest differences. In the same pond, for instance, several goldfish of roughly comparable size will still develop into extremely different sized fish. Why? Some of the fish have a minor advantage since they are only a tiny bit bigger than the others. Because they are better at catching food, they grow more quickly than the smaller fish. As a result, they have a greater edge and can catch more food. With each loop, the cycle thus gains momentum and finally results in size disparities that are noticeable. These disparities are normal, but many people think they're unfair. We refer to it as social injustice when 20% of the population owns 80% of the wealth, as is the case with the unequal distribution of income and wealth. People feel that work and reward should have a 1-to-1 ratio of importance, which leads to this perception of unfairness. However, not all work results in the same reward, as the 80-20 rule amply illustrates. Concept 3. The 80-20 rule can assist you in streamlining your workflow and enhancing your output. You may be asking yourself by this point, this is all well and good, but how does the 80-20 principle pertain to me and my daily life? Since the method you now operate is probably not very effective, let's start by looking at your professional life. Just think about it. If you put in only 20% of the effort and get 80% of the results, that means 80% of your labor is horribly inefficient. Just think about how much more work you could do if you could replace this time with activities you conduct in your productive 20% of the day. For instance, picture being able to maintain your last-minute efficiency as a project deadline approaches throughout the whole project. The 80-20 rule can actually help you become more productive because you'll focus less on activities that have little or no bearing on your outcomes. Start by studying and analyzing your work processes to determine which elements are ineffective. For instance, you might discover that you spend time at the beginning of a project by overanalyzing and second-guessing every potential error. Realizing this allows you to actively strive to break yourself of the habit of dwelling on potential failures. Whatever the causes, you can dramatically improve your efficiency by identifying them and restructuring your procedure to avoid them. Concept 4. Use the 80-20 rule to boost your company's revenues. Now that you know how to use the 80-20 rule to maximize your own productivity, you're probably wondering how it might be used in business. There are a number of ways to achieve this, but possibly the most crucial is to optimize your company's product line. To do this, you must first determine which of your product groups is producing the greatest revenue. You may easily determine that the top products only account for 20% of sales but produce 80% of the profit by ranking all of your products according to their profit and sales data. The top 3 goods, for instance, accounted for 19.9% of all sales but generated a staggering 52.6% of total earnings, according to research the author did at an electronics manufacturer. The next stage is to maximize and exploit the potential of that 20% of your business that is lucrative after you have determined the 80-20 split in your organization. Prioritize these items and concentrate your efforts on boosting their sales. By instructing salespeople that their sole objective was to double the sales of those 3 products, the author helped management at the electronics firm. Concept 5. To succeed, simplify and lessen complexity in your company. As we all know, large corporations are frequently extremely complex. Managers must be skilled at handling complexity, and they frequently look forward to the challenge and intellectual stimulation it presents. But is embracing or even encouraging complexity really the greatest path to building a successful business? Most people think that having a large company and a diverse product line is beneficial for the business because the more things a firm sells, the more profit it should be able to make. Internal intricacy does, however, come at a significant expense. A wide variety of products necessitates, among other things, more complex logistics, greater salesperson training, and a great deal more administrative work than a restricted variety. These elements raise the total cost to the business, possibly much more than the extra sales the additional products generate. On the other side, your company will spend less money if you simplify. Everyone in the company will be able to devote their full attention to the few products that are sold if you focus and narrow your product line. Instead of having to juggle dozens of items, this enables people to comprehend the few crucial ones in more depth. As a result, administrative tasks are made simpler, and production and logistics benefit from economies of scale, which are advantages achieved from doing more of something. These advantages' potency is obvious. For instance, a study of 39 medium-sized businesses revealed that the least complex ones had the most success. They had fewer suppliers, a smaller range of products they sold to fewer customers, and higher profits as a result. It is obvious that you may save costs and raise profitability by streamlining your firm. Key Concept 6. The 80-20 rule can be used in all facets of business, from bargaining to focusing marketing efforts. Now that you are aware of how to narrow your product offering and boost profitability, let's apply the 80-20 rule. But what about every other company sector? Fortunately, you can use the 80-20 rule to increase the likelihood of success in almost any area or function of business. For instance, negotiations are a crucial component of any business, whether they are with partners, suppliers, or clients. In a negotiation, the topics to be covered are frequently well planned out in advance, but there are far too many of them. You should concentrate on winning those points rather than trying to convince the other points to support you, as an 80-20 analysis would likely show that only a few of them are important to your company. Targeting your marketing efforts is another way to put the 80-20 rule into practice. You should focus on identifying them and persuading these customers to keep buying if 20% of your customers account for 80% of your revenue. After locating your target audience, win their loyalty by offering crazily superior customer service. Next, concentrate only on this 20% when creating new goods or services. This will enable you to sell to the same customers while growing your market share. One of the top real estate brokers in the US, Nicholas Barson, makes over $1 million in personal commissions annually, as an example. Keeping his best clients satisfied is clearly a profitable strategy, as over a third of this sum comes from returning clients who later sell their homes. The 80-20 rule practically applies to every business, as should be obvious by this point. Concept 7. By altering your way of thinking, apply the 80-20 rule to your daily life. As you can see from the business examples, the 80-20 principle is typically used by determining which 20% of inputs result in 80% of outputs. But carrying out such an analysis in your day-to-day activities is challenging. You therefore require 80-20 thinking, among other things. Traditional thinking follows a linear process and holds that all causes and inputs are equally significant. For instance, we learn as children that the value of each of our friends is equal to that of the others. According to the 80-20 rule, not all relationships are as valuable as they first appear to be in this situation. The friendships we have with some of our friends are more significant than those we have with others. You could say that 20% of your friendships generate 80% of the value, which includes, for example, the feelings of joy and camaraderie you derive from those connections. An analysis would require you to gather data and analyze it to determine who the most important 20% of the population is, whereas in 80-20 thinking you merely estimate them. This is the main distinction between an 80-20 analysis and 80-20 thinking. You can always ask yourself, of the people in my life, who are the most important to me? However, it is obvious that the value of your relationships can't really be measured in absolute numbers in this situation. How much time do I spend talking and being with them each week? You can decide which relationships are most significant to you by using this type of question. Then, according to the 80-20 rule, you should prioritize developing those 20% of relationships that are the most significant and valuable. Without the need for reliable data, 80-20 thinking can be used to make decisions in many different areas of life. Key concept 8, don't concentrate on time management. Instead, spend your time on the most crucial tasks. The idea of time management, which self-help books frequently promote, is probably not unfamiliar to you. The basic concept is to help you accomplish more in the time you have, and this method is proven to be effective because it boosts productivity by between 15 and 25%. However, there is a still better way to become effective. In time management, efficiency is increased by cramming more tasks into a given amount of time. The first step is to classify one's daily activities according to priority. It is intended for executives who already have a busy schedule. This is where the issues begin because most people mistakenly classify 60 to 70% of their to-do list as high priority because they are unsure of which of their tasks are the most crucial. As a result, they end up with overly busy schedules and longer workdays. It is obvious that adding more tasks to an already packed schedule is not a good idea, as this can easily lead to overwork and, in the worst case, burnout. As an alternative, Time Revolution or 80-20 time management can assist you in focusing on the 20% of your tasks that result in 80% of your accomplishments. The author found, for instance, that his consulting company was more successful than others without putting in any extra effort. Typically, consultants try to solve a wide range of problems for their clients, producing only superficial work, with the client being in charge of putting any recommendations into action. Comparatively, the author's colleagues concentrated on the top 20% of client issues and used the time they saved to help clients implement recommendations. This strategy enabled them to outperform competing consulting firms and boost their clients' earnings. You can free up time with the aid of this time revolution without having your work's impact suffer. Concept 9. Applying the 80-20 rule broadly will lead to an improvement in life quality overall. Happiness in general is how most people gauge their quality of life. But interestingly, very few of us actually make an effort to alter our lives in order to improve our happiness. The majority of people actually spend a lot of time doing things that are unsatisfying. For instance, a great deal of people have miserable jobs. The majority of office workers spend their days sitting in cubicles, going through routine tasks without thinking, and waiting for the day or week to end. So how do you fix this? Simply put, before making changes, you should try to pinpoint the sources of your happiness and unhappiness and map out their distribution in your life. What 20% of your life gives you 80% of your happiness, and what 20% of your life gives you 20% of your misery? Once you have identified the 80% of your life that contributes little to your happiness, it is time to take action. Just cut back on the amount of time you spend doing those things. You might try to come up with solutions if, for instance, your job is causing you stress. You could search for alternative employment, attempt to restructure your current position, cut back on your working hours, and so on. But whatever you do, you shouldn't give up and accept a job that you hate for the rest of your life. When you succeed in reducing the things that upset you, you'll discover that you have more time and energy to devote to the things that actually make you happy. For instance, if you decide to work fewer hours, you'll have more time for your friends and family. Consider the 20% of your life's activities that account for 80% of your happiness, then look for ways to spend more time doing them. Doing so will make your life happier. Final analysis. These summaries' main point is: the 80-20 rule states that in almost every situation, 20% of the input or effort results in 80% of the output or reward. This indicates that almost 80% of efforts are not used effectively, and if you refocus them on the 20% that is yielding the most results, you'll notice a significant improvement in efficiency. This straightforward idea can be used to improve your business, friendships, and quality of life, among other areas of your life. If you found this summary useful and would want to dive deeper into the book, you can purchase a copy on Amazon by clicking the link in the description box to purchase on Amazon.com.